one mission and it turns into another. It's just unacceptable. The FBI became politically and socially weaponized. They were using funds to go after January 6 misdemeanors, and the efforts that they put towards DEI and other efforts that are non-mission related, to me, is an example of fraud, waste, and abuse.
The trial of a white police officer accused of killing a black man in New Mexico is going off the rails, according to a law enforcement expert. More from Steve Jordahl.
It's the George Floyd Derek Chauvin trial part 2, where white former police officer Brad Lunsford has been accused of murdering African-American Presley Ezzie. Body cam footage shows a scuffle between Lunsford and Ezzie during an investigation into an alleged stolen beer. Randy Sutton of the Wounded Blue says the situation quickly became desperate for the police officers.
And the suspect is on top of him, trying to yank his pistol out of his holster. He can't get it out, but he does get his taser out. And as he's preparing to use the taser, the other officer, his partner, shoots him and kills him.
He says in the walk-up to the trial, New Mexico Attorney General Raul Torres consistently gave out signals that he believed Lunsford was guilty. From a local news account,
Ezze's family, their attorney, and the local NAACP stood by the Attorney General when he announced,
"We determined that criminal charges were justified in this context."
Sutton says Torres seemed more interested in the opinions of the community than the facts of the case.
There is going to be a strong reaction. There will be a strong and understandable sense of anger.
He says the trial was no better.
There are two jurors who are, no, this guy's not guilty. They remove them from the jury and replace them with alternates and get their conviction.
The judge in the case has admitted several errors in the trial and has granted Lunsford permission to file a motion for a new trial. I'm Steve Jordahl.
The federal judge has dismissed New York City Mayor Eric Adams' corruption case. Judge Dale E. Ho today granted the Justice Department's request to set aside criminal charges so the mayor could aid President Trump's immigration crackdown. But the judge denied prosecutors the ability to potentially bring the criminal case back after the mayoral election. More news available online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Pugh.
The recent tornado outbreak has devastated so many people in the Midwest and the South. 8 Days of Hope is ready to deploy their rapid response ministry to Cave City, Arkansas and Tylertown, Mississippi from March 20th to April 5th in order to help those impacted restore what's been destroyed. If you're 18 or older, you can help. Visit 8daysofhope.com to find out how you can volunteer. This is an urgent need. Visit 8daysofhope.com today.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildmon, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Today is Wednesday, April the 2nd, 2025. So if anybody plays a joke on you today, they're a day late. And tell them they're a dollar short.
There you go.
Where'd that expression come from?
I don't know.
A day late and a dollar short. We've all heard it.
Yeah.
I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Vitagliano. Good morning, Brother Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
And Wesley Wildman. Good morning, Wesley.
Good morning. Still wearing the state shirt. But for those that keep up with Mississippi, those that keep up with college sports, there's a thing called baseball.
Right, college baseball. You're a big college baseball fan.
And my team is continually underperforming, and then they underperform worse than the week before. And then they play a worse team than the week before, and then play worse than that.
I have scheduled you with a counselor.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can talk about this later.
We didn't talk about this.
Think America cares about.
They don't. But for those 5 people out there watching and that see my state shirt, I have not lost my mind.
That's right.
I'm committed.
Those watching on YouTube, Wesley's wearing his alma mater's colors and shirt, Mississippi State.
And to go along with me,
Chris Woodward.
Yes.
We do hire other people. We hire there's a lot of Ole Miss people here. So we're an equal opportunity employer.
I'm a Notre Dame fan.
Notre Dame fan. We don't discriminate based on your school.
Chris has his on too, so I figured that would be a good segue.
Yeah, I often imagine God giggled in the 90s when I, under my own free will, found teams to root for because God knows all, and God knew then that I would root for a lot of
You've
teams.
never
that
had
were
a consistent winner in your life, have
No.
you, Chris?
I'm just going to make a theological correction
Please
here,
do.
and God does not giggle, sir. All right?
Yeah,
I hate to do that at the top
I'm
of the
with
show.
Ed, Chris, and,
Yeah.
and I'm going to step away from you.
there is a plan.
now
I
because,
have heard of the phrase before. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So that's
Yep.
That's kind of what I was saying.
Laugh, I can go. I can travel down that road with you.
Right, but giggle.
But giggle,
God,
absolutely
God
not.
doesn't giggle.
No,
Where in the Bible does it say God
I
giggled?
think exactly.
And God giggled. All right, thank
Talk
you.
about splitting hairs, giggling and laughing.
Hey,
Oh, I see that. That's exactly what happens when you leave sound doctrine. You can't even
Up to
see the
s-
difference between a laugh and a giggle.
Okay.
Do you giggle?
I do.
all right.
You do?
I think
At
this show
times.
needs a reset right here. We need to start over.
Well, I'll
What do
bring
we-
it down with tariffs here in a
So,
minute. So-
anyway, all right, a lot to talk about today. Jenna Ellis will be with us a little bit later in the program.
She'll bring some seriousness.
She will, and she told us that she has to be off by 10:45. She got some kind of appointment that's more important than our show,
Yes.
which I found very disappointing.
Mm.
But anyway, we'll see how it goes. Again, thank you for listening to American Family Radio. And what else was I going to mention? Real quickly, we have our summer tours are almost slap full, and they're not
You just
full.
like using slaps.
Slap.
Trump started
Almost
slapping
slap full.
tariffs.
So, but we do have, well, I guess we got just a handful of seats on our Williamsburg and D.C. June tours. I'm talking like under 10 seats remaining.
Wow.
Yeah, but we do have some space available, although it's going fast, for our September tours, and including the October tour of Boston. Boston and the greater Boston area and all the history there. We're going to see it with a bunch of our supporters, and that's in October. So if you're interested in the Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown trip, and or the Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon tour in September that we're going on, or the October Boston trip, which we have a few seats left for that one, here's how you go and read the itinerary, the cost, and everything about them. Just go to wildmongroup.com. WILDMON group.com. If you go to WILDMAN, you're in the wrong place. And Wesley said if you go there, you're going to end up what?
It's some business.
Some business. And we're not.
It's an LLC or something.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, ours is WILDMON group.com. What's our first story, Chris?
Well, I want to bring people's attention to our website, afn.net, where on the front page you can find information about what went down yesterday or last night in
What went down, Chris?
Florida. Two Republicans, Jimmy Patronis and Randy Fine, won special elections yesterday in two Florida congressional districts. These were seats that were vacated by Representative Matt Gaetz when he resigned as a member of Congress to try to become the Attorney General, and obviously we know what happened there. The other seat was held once by Michael Waltz. He's now the National Security Advisor under President Trump. So they had to have special elections, and these seats, long story short, are remaining in Republican hands, which is what Republicans wanted. An interesting angle here is that Democrats spent a ton of money to try to get one or both of these seats, but obviously that didn't work. So the GOP is going to retain its majority with these two members coming to Congress here in the next few days.
Okay.
And Jenna is going to talk about the elections.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, in other related news, we had Sandy Rios on to discuss the Wisconsin Supreme Court yesterday. That Wisconsin Supreme Court race ended with the lady that Sandy described yesterday as a radical leftist feminist, Susan Crawford. She won that election over the Republican that billionaire Elon Musk and others were trying to get elected there in Wisconsin. This cements a liberal majority there in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and many people are concerned that they're going to rule in favor of things like redistricting, possibly taking away some seats held by Republicans. They will rule in favor of abortion, anything involving unions, that kind of stuff. One positive note that did come out of Wisconsin was that voters did approve a voter ID requirement. So it's kind of a mixed bag there in the in the state of Wisconsin.
I was thinking about that this morning. I'm not sure exactly how to read it. Does that mean that that Democrats also agree with voting election?
ID laws and stuff?
Yeah.
It's safe to say that at least some Democrats are in favor of you having to show ID.
Well, it
to
only
prove
makes
that you're-
sense. I'm glad they're doing that.
And it was not even, I mean, it wasn't even close. The measure was backed by 63% of voters.
But the reason I ask is because the alternative would be Republicans just only showed up to vote just for that one ballot, and that I don't see that. being
What you're
probable.
saying is it kind of doesn't make sense because the same people evidently who voted for a lefty Supreme Court justice who would probably say, no, you don't need an ID to vote
Right.
in our state. We're talking about these.
Or used to would have said that at least.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Also voted for IDs.
Mhm.
A government issued IDs in order to be able to vote in the state of Wisconsin.
Yes.
So
President Trump,
Listen, I would just say, I would hope that would be a nonpartisan issue.
And I think
on the
that's what-
voter ID law, and maybe that's what we see in the result here in Wisconsin. And to Wesley's point, maybe increasingly,
Hopefully, yeah.
even Democrats are seeing you can have people who aren't from around here,
Yeah, sure.
who aren't citizens,
Mhm.
helping to pass laws that affect citizens.
yes.
Yep. With the some of the Doge findings of people that are getting paychecks that are dead, those
we're going
type-
to talk about that more next hour.
Yep. So when
What they found with Social Security is appalling.
Yep. And so finding things out like that, and we'll obviously elaborate on that more with Steve in the
Yeah.
second hour. But that kind of stuff, I think, is having more common sense Democrats saying yes to this type of initiative
I like
Yes.
your use of the word "stuff" there.
stuff.
It was it was appropriately used.
It made me giggle.
Yeah.
I did. I do have a
played.
quote here from President Trump. He did weigh in on the voter ID approval there in Wisconsin. He said, "Quote: Voter ID was just approved in Wisconsin election. Democrats fought hard against this, presumably so they can cheat. This is a big win for Republicans, maybe the biggest win of the night. And many of those things I just said were in all caps.
Tell us how you really feel.
Right? Yeah. That's from the president himself.
One thing about President Trump, huh?
Well,
You
there
get
was
it- you usually get it raw and unedited.
there was a lot of money, out of state money,
Yeah, poured into
poured into the Wisconsin race. I'm not sure about the Florida race, but
Races.
some of that, the race is. Some of that money going into Wisconsin was from Elon Musk.
Yes.
He had $20 million.
Yeah,
So.
and CNN, MSNBC, the liberals that have their own news outlets are trying to make this proof that people are rejecting what they're calling the Trump-Musk agenda. They don't want billionaire Elon Musk involved in our elections, although they never say anything about George Soros.
Well, we sure do.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm.
And for those podcasts, go to afr.net.
I have moles in my yard.
Mhm.
I blame that on George Soros. I blame just about everything on George Soros.
Yeah.
Fair.
You know,
Well,
This makes
a lot
sense.
of fire ants.
Yeah, this makes sense.
Fire
Yep.
ants.
Yeah.
George Soros.
Next story, Chris.
Kudzu.
We're
Yes.
yeah, we need to move on to the next
Well,
story.
this could very well have been the lead story had we not had those election results that I just mentioned here.
Uh-huh.
Today is the day in which tariffs on foreign-made automobiles go into effect, and President Trump also
What's he call this day, Chris?
Liberation Day,
Today,
and he's calling it Liberation Day because
not Liberace Day.
right, yeah,
That's that's another day altogether. That's
Hey,
coming up.
that's
the,
when everybody gathers together to
No,
dress
that's
flashy
coming up
and play
the-
pianos.
middle of May.
Now,
We'll let you know.
he's calling it Liberation Day because this is the day in which he is slapping reciprocal tariffs on countries. These are different from the auto tariffs. I can explain all this if you want.
No, we won't.
I'm
I
happy
was
to
going
do
to say,
it.
this
Good.
is going to be a long
We're-
show.
This is why I didn't
because-
lead with it.
Good
because
luck.
now, at this point, with all the jokes off the radio about tariffs, if you just say the word, I can't keep a straight face. So just exclude me
tariffs?
from this conversation,
Yeah.
and I'll just listen. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
This is one of those things where
Things.
I think it's safe to say neither us nor our listening audience has a clue
Yes.
about the topic at hand.
Well,
Maybe an opinion, but we don't really know what we're talking about. But we have to pretend
Yes.
somewhat that we do, right, Ed?
I
But
pretend.
But you read up on them, hadn't you?
I listen.
So Ed's but Chris just said he's going to explain them to us.
Please
Yes, he
do,
did.
Chris.
So Chris, the floor is yours.
I have a BA in communication from an agricultural and mechanical university. I'm well versed on issues like tariffs.
Communicate, brother.
Yes.
Go.
All right.
Go.
So I do have some audio here from an economist by the name of Richard
Oh, you're going
Stern.
to defer.
Yes. Well, I'm
Okay.
gonna play this because he's gonna set up what exactly is being tariffed today in the way of foreign-made automobiles.
Is tariffed like a verb?
It's
what is that?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
taxed, if you want to
Okay,
say
okay,
that
tariff.
as a synonym.
All right.
But
let's
here
go.
is Richard Stern, an economist at Heritage, explaining to us what autos are being tariffed today and how much. Clip 3.
And that's going to be 25% on all foreign-made cars, and it's also going to be 25% on all car parts that are made abroad. Now, that's going to hit car parts that are both, something you might buy to make a repair to your car, but it's also going to hit car parts that come into U.S. car manufacturers who do assembly work but don't make the entire thing from scratch in the U.S.
Now, a lot of people listening to this show live in parts of the country where there are foreign companies that make automobiles here in the U.S. Mississippi is no stranger to this. We have a Toyota plant not too far from us. We've got Nissan down in Jackson. Over in the great state of Alabama, you've got Mercedes, Honda, Hyundai, those kinds of things. As Richard explained to me, he does not think that the auto tariffs are going to impact foreign-made automobiles here in the U.S. because those are being made in the U.S. by American workers with American-made parts. All that to say, if you are in the market for a vehicle, you need to shop around and you need to not shy away from asking questions of the dealers, because we've also heard from people, our sources at AFN, that have told us that some dealerships are going to be raising the prices on cars, saying it's because of the tariffs.
All right. If I can try to be serious here about this.
Right.
Because try.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do it.
I can do it. Okay. I'm going to try to be serious about this for a minute. Okay. So this is a situation, I'm talking about President Trump's tariffs. Today's Liberation Day, he says, where two things can be true at once. All right. So I have heard President Trump, and I have read about this, but I've heard President Trump make the case for why he believes in these tariffs, because he would argue that these other countries that he is instituting, if you can institute, he's leveling these tariffs at, well, really it's the world, but with respect to the automobile manufacturers, automobile companies, they have tariffs on us in these other countries, and we don't have them on them. They have tariffs on our exports, but we don't have tariffs on their imports. So it's an imbalance with respect to. So I think everybody can pretty well understand that argument, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now here's the second part of that, which people who are against tariffs would argue is also true. They may even concede that President Trump is right on his analysis. However, that doesn't mean that it's going to cause the prices of a lot of products and automobiles, for example, that are not wholly made in the United States to go way up. And that's going to cause the prices, as this gentleman said here, on parts of automobiles also that are needed to build it to go way up, which causes ultimately the price of cars and other things to go up in our country substantially.
Can I
Does
just give a
that
little
make
bit
sense?
Can I just give a little personal experience here?
Okay.
You're going to share?
I'm going to share about a personal experience.
Okay, please do.
That I think would apply to this issue of car parts. So I drive a Volkswagen. For the most part, I think the parts to repair it come from overseas, come from Europe. Okay, the reason I think that is still true is that in 2021, as we were still having a lot of the issues related to COVID, somebody I know backed into my car and
Your Volkswagen?
My Volkswagen, and dented the door. It was not my wife.
Okay.
It was a family member.
Okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
All right. So,
no names.
Not mentioning any names.
Okay.
It was my daughter.
Okay, but don't mention her name.
But I'm not mentioning her name.
Okay.
So, rather than try to file that, I didn't want my insurance going. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was going to pay for it. So I go to the Volkswagen guy, and I said, okay, I want to replace the door. He's okay. This is going to cost you an arm and a leg. He said, and guess what? We can't get it for 3 months.
Ooh.
Because it has to come from the place where we get those parts over in whatever, Belgium or something like that. So for there are people who the vehicles they own, those parts come from overseas. Now, some of the parts probably are being made in the United States, but Volkswagen parts, I know, were coming from Europe. So for those people, here's why I'm nervous about the tariffs. First of all, I trust the president. He's a businessman. This is probably the best way forward. Okay, so I trust the president on this. Second of all you countries that have been taking advantage of us all this time, and you knew it, well, guess what? The chickens have come home to roost, and now it's Liberation Day. Okay, so
and they're American chickens,
and they're American chickens, and they're going to roost right on top of your heads.
Yes.
Okay, but I am nervous because in the short term, the president says all these jobs are coming back to the United States. Well, you know what? This is not like a Dollar General where they just pop up like a fire ant bed.
It's
in
our
your
new
yard
safe flowers.
overnight. Okay, you can't create a Volkswagen plant that produces Volkswagen parts overnight. It can take 2 or 3 years. So I am nervous about the short term over the next couple of years effect of these tariffs on our economy, and therefore the effect on the midterm elections.
Now, what may or may not bring calm to this situation is something that's going to be happening this afternoon. And I say that because at 3 o'clock Central, President Donald Trump will deliver remarks on the new tariffs, to which he is expected to lay out his reasonings as to why we're doing this. We may have clips from this tomorrow, and I would be shocked if we don't have some sort of response from another country.
And let me just interject this here for just a second. I know Wesley's been trying to jump in here. And last year, the U.S. trade deficit was $1.2 trillion. That means other countries were getting the best of us in the trade relationships we had with them to the tune of over $1 trillion.
Yeah, what I was going to ask is if you could take your explanation and then put it in a 4D chess version.
Yes.
No, in all seriousness, there have been things in the past where up front, President Trump and his team does something, and you go, that doesn't, I don't know why. And then you look up and something good's come out, the art of the deal type thing. So I just wonder if this is not, at minimum, even if he changes his mind down the road or whatever I wonder at minimum is this to make a point that we're being unequally tariffed from other countries, at minimum, making that aware to the American people, because I didn't know about that. Maybe I should have, but I didn't pay attention to that. I didn't. So for me, I'm caught up now. Anytime tariffs come up, I'm caught up figuring out what other countries are doing to us to see is it equal, is it fair, and so that's something that that wasn't a train of thought that I had.
Yeah,
right.
And so,
well, again.
I understand.
You can argue that the tariffs are unfair, the tariffs, the trade imbalance that you're talking about, but there still are economic ramifications for upsetting the apple cart, so to speak, or upsetting the status quo in the name of nationalism or in the name of America first, economic, fairness, whatever you want to say. So it's President Trump he's staking everything on this. So he better hope he's right, and we better hope he's right. Those of us who believe in his agenda, the vast majority of his agenda that I'm aware of, I'm supportive of, because if it doesn't work and it backfires, and the people in the country are going to vote against him in the midterms. That's how it goes.
It's all
politics.
Everything about the MAGA movement and the Trump agenda is, for better or for worse, riding on this.
It is.
Okay, because we are seeing the depths of the problems in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
We've been talking about what Doge has been uncovering, the massive deficits, all this kind of stuff. We've been seeing this since Trump came into office, and all of that would stop if the midterms flip the House and or the Senate, and then a Democrat gets back in office in 2028. So what I'm saying is it's all tethered to that tariff strategy.
Yes, and furthermore, President Trump is not only doing this, and he's going to give a speech about this afternoon. That's good. That's good to know. I think he needed to do that
from him.
From him, a formal speech, not off the cuff.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So let me finish this, and then you can. I'm
so sorry.
Okay. Okay. So President Trump not only believes this is fair and right for our country, he also believes that this is going to make us a boatload of money, and it's going to. He's mentioned before, we're going to have so much money coming in, we don't know what to do with it.
Right.
Because of these tariffs. That's what he believes. I've heard him talk about it before. So we'll see what he says this afternoon. It'll very much be worth. I'm glad he's going to give it in a formal setting. Where is it going to be? Do you know anything about it?
It's going to be at outside the White House.
Okay, go with your eye.
I agree with. I apologize that I interrupted you.
That's okay. No.
I would like for him to explain it to me like I'm 5. How the American people benefit from this.
I think he will. He'll explain it to like you're a 5-year-old, Chris.
I had gray hair back then too.
Huh? All right, so we're going to take a short time out right here. We'll be back. Jenna Ellis will be. You talk about a tariff expert right here. Jenna Ellis is going to bring it when we get back from the break. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildmon.
The air conditioner in the church building broke down. The fan in the unit was still working, but the unit wasn't cooling. I called the man who had installed the unit, and he came to fix it. Checking it out, he discovered that the gas had leaked from the unit, causing the trouble. The unit was checked out very close in an effort to find the leak. However, no damage in the unit or the pipes could be found. So the fellow who came to repair the unit put gas into it, and the unit began cooling at maximum efficiency again. You know, that unit worked good for about 3 weeks. Then one day I noticed that it wasn't cooling. The fan was just blowing out hot air. So I called the fellow a second time and told him what had happened. He came back, checked, and found that the gas had escaped again. This time he started hunting for the hole where the gas was leaking with more determination. I guess he searched for about 4 hours for that hole. He ran a check on all the lines, dug holes in the ground, searching around the pipe, even ripped off the protective covering from the pipe, but all in vain. No sign of any place where the gas was escaping. He took out a container of gas, hooked it up to the unit, and began to fill the pipes again. The unit began cooling. He knew it was a leak, but he couldn't find it. The fellow applied the pressure to the unit. He ran the pressure to nearly twice what it should be. He was putting a terrific strain on the equipment. Finally, with the pressure greatly increased, he found the hole. It was so tiny that even a straight pin could not fit in it. It was such a tiny hole. But it was responsible for the failure of the unit. It did just as much damage as a hole 10 times its size. It just took a little longer. A fellow once asked me if there were degrees of sin. That is one sin worse than another? You see, this fellow was guilty of what we commonly call a little sin. It was no major thing, and most people simply ignored it. He was, in effect, pointing his finger at those who committed more serious sins. He was hoping, of course, to excuse his minor sin. Well, there is degree in sin. Not all sin is as great as other sin. Stealing a dime could hardly be classified as serious as killing a neighbor. So in one way of thinking, the fellow who asked the question was correct. His sin wasn't as great as that of some others. Now back to that air conditioner. It wasn't the size of the hole which caused the damage. It was the hole. So it is with sin. It's not the size of the sin which separates us from God. It is the sin. The results of a little sin and a great sin, the results are the same. A hole is a hole, and a sin is a sin. That means, of course, that those who commit little sins need forgiveness as much as those who commit great sins. So instead of pointing your finger, you better bow your head.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildmon, a production of the American Family Association.
Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." Matthew 19:14.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Welcome back to this edition of Tariff Talk on American Family Radio. We're here every day to bore you out of your mind for at least an hour and a half. So,
at least the world of tariffs.
The world of tariffs. Ed, could you read chapter 4 from
Thomas Sowell's?
And please stick to the script. No ad lib. We just want it right from the script.
Right
from the script.
You want to interpret that for our friends north of the Mason-Dixon line?
R-I-G-H-T.
All right, so you're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. Tim, Ed, Wesley, and Chris. And Jenna joins us now. Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio. Heard weekdays from 7 to 8 o'clock Central Time right here on American Family Radio. And host of the On Demand podcast found at afr.net, where Jenna interviews people and does deep dives on various and sundry topics that you will be interested in. It's called On Demand with Jenna Ellis. It's a podcast, and it goes out weekly. Good morning, Jenna.
Good morning. And I, too, bored my listeners this morning talking about tariffs. So it seems
I wasn't bored. It was pretty
Ed's. I listened for 20 minutes. Ed, you get about 25 or 30 minutes of Jenna in the morning, don't you?
I do. It's very taxing to cover tariffs.
I will actually listen getting ready and on the way to work.
So what did you appreciate about Jenna's show this morning, Ed?
Well, she did have someone on talking about, she had Pastor Jack Hibbs on talking about the death penalty. Mm-hmm. And then she had a guest on, I don't remember his name, but talking
Representative Stutzman.
That's it right there. Yes. Talking about tariffs.
Hey, but first of all, before we get in, what do you got, 10 minutes? When do you have to leave?
Yes, 10 minutes, because unfortunately I have an appointment after this. I didn't realize we were having tariff talk, then I wouldn't have scheduled something right after
I don't know what
this.
can be more important than tariff talk, but whatever it is, we'll just trust you on that. So 2 victories for Republicans in Florida last night?
Yes, we secured the Republican seats in Florida that they did not flip after Matt Gaetz had resigned from his congressional seat in Florida's 1st District. And then Michael Waltz, of course, is the NSA director, and so vacated his seat. And both of those were won by the Republican candidates. But what was interesting about it, from my perspective, is that these were a lot closer elections than those districts in 2024 for Trump. And when we also compare Wisconsin, and that Trump won that swing state in 2024, and then the Supreme Court seat actually went to the leftist, even though voter ID did pass by an overwhelming margin. It's interesting to see that even the Trump endorsements don't carry the same weight as the man himself. And so I think heading into the midterms, that's really going to need to be the focus for conservative candidates in particular, that they can't just say, well, Trump won this district by 30 points, so we'll be fine nominating whoever. Because in the state of Florida, particularly in the 6th district, Floridians widely across the state were not fans of this particular candidate. They came out, voted for him anyway. But in my personal opinion, we could have had a much stronger conservative running to replace Waltz.
Mm-hmm. Well, but for now, I hear you, by the way, and we'll see what happens 2 years from now, or when the next election. No, it'll be a year and a half from now. Year and a half from now. But it was important that for the Republicans, it was important that they maintain those 2 seats so they could keep the majority, because it's only like a 5-vote, whatever it is, 5 or 6 vote difference between Republicans and Democrats in the House of Representatives. So President Trump is going to give a speech this afternoon explaining tariffs and his belief in them to all of us, and it's going to be a formal speech, and he needs to do that because stock market's going up and down, mostly down, because they say of President Trump's economic policies, especially the
it is destabilizing because nobody knows how this is going to play out in terms of whether President Trump can get deals with other countries.
Yeah, what do you comment on all this, if you would, Jenna?
Right. Well, and I had Tho Bishop, who's one of my favorite guests as an economist from the Mises Institute, on last week, and his perspective, which I think is wise, is that when we're looking at the markets, and they do, as Ed just mentioned, require stability, and when Trump is basically testing foreign leaders, now the market has to rely upon an unknown of how will a foreign leader react, and so that's why you get some of that volatility. But the White House just released an email from their Office of Communications, and I'm on that press list, and it says tariffs work, and President Trump's first term proves it. For the first time in decades, the United States will see fair trade as President Trump announces tariffs to level the playing field for American workers and businesses. So I think he's playing a little bit of the long game here, because he's trying to say, well, wait a minute, if we have had, and to echo what Representative Stutzman said this morning on my show, if we have had a tariff or even a ban on some exports from the United States, like his example was Wagyu beef to Australia, and we have a ban on that, but then we don't tariff any of the imports from Australia on our meats, then that's unfair, and we're not encouraging and incentivizing anything from our farmers. And when we look at even like the auto industry and the emphasis that Trump had on the USMCA that replaced NAFTA in his first term, all of the reasons and rationale that he wanted to bring manufacturing from overseas back domestically, a lot of tariffs, the incentive there is to get companies to say, well, wait a minute, we're not going to do the cheaper labor and manufacturing overseas and then bring those things into America because of the tariff costs. We need to then just locate our manufacturing in the U.S. So I think there is some long-term strategy here and benefit. And I think overall for people listening, tariff doesn't necessarily make sense. It's not as easily understood as maybe like a sales tax or tax on good that we deal with every day. And so it's a little bit of an esoteric concept. But I personally, just because of the way that Trump did get a lot of the auto industry more in shape, brought manufacturing back to Michigan, some of those things, and then also the USMCA is way better for trade relations between Canada and Mexico from his first term. I'm willing to give him the benefit of playing the long game and saying, okay, let's trust him on this tariff policy and then kind of take the wait and see approach, not just react with volatility like the market.
Jenna, let me just ask you this. I think that the tariffs go along with President Trump's overall America First agenda. And the reason I say this, and I want your take on it, is that it seems to me that the process, that what you just described and what Representative Stutzman described, was a globalist free trade system that the globalists said, okay, the U.S. is going to drive the benefit of the trade system we have in place by buying cheaper goods, for let's say from China, even if it costs U.S. manufacturing and costs U.S. jobs, because it's good for China and therefore it's good for the world markets, for the U.S. to basically subsidize everyone else's industries. And what President Trump seems to have said is, well, we're not doing that anymore. We are not going to think about what benefits the global trade system. We're going to look at what benefits us, and that means we're going to manufacture our own stuff and give that an advantage. Do you think that the way trade was done before Trump was a globalist ideal, and the globalists loved it because it cost us? We were funding it.
Well, I think this is keeping right in line with Trump's America First policies, and it doesn't make sense if you look at just the economic view of incentivizing Americans and what's best for us to be concerned about global trade in general. We don't want to benefit other nations at expense of ourselves in terms of these types of economic offsets. So I think that rationale makes sense. It's consistent with President Trump's America First agenda. It's consistent with the mandate that voters gave to him. And to recontemplate some of these things, I mean, it's the same rationale as DOGE, where it's like we've been spending billions of dollars on all of these line items, and nobody has thought, even Republicans over the last 20, 30, 40 years, to say, well, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't. And so Trump actually recontemplating some of these deals and renegotiating them, I think really is in line with America First, and we should be championing that as conservatives.
Does that answer your question, Ed?
It does.
Okay. All right, Jenna, we now formally release you until your appointment.
I appreciate that so much. This has been Jenna Ellis on Tariff Talks. I look forward to joining you next week. Yes. Dark side of the moon there. But thanks, guys. I always appreciate talking to you.
See you next time. All right. That's Jenna Ellis joining us from the Sunshine State.
We could, for this show, have little gags that we have. Like, we could do Tariff Talk and have some sort of little music. That comes on.
Why don't you get us some Tariff Talk? Tariff Talk music together.
I mean, our production teams they got nothing going on.
Okay,
we
tell them
we could have little. We could have little. So we say, well, it's time now for Tariff Talk.
I tell you what we need.
We have a little music.
Yes, and we can have emails sent in from our listeners, just one sentence or two sentences in their thoughts on tariffs. What do you think? We read them.
That's what I was gonna say. Only if we take the time to read them.
We need to read them, but we need just to read them as they are.
That's what's
because they're going to be heartfelt.
No commentary, no ad lib, just right off.
Read the comments on tariff.
Dave in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
He says.
I have been sitting on a 12-part series on ethanol that I keep meaning to air, and every time I do, Trump does something, and then nobody cares.
A 12-part series on ethanol.
Man, it's deep. Let me tell you.
Welcome today to
Ethanol Talk.
Ethanol
with
Talk.
Chris Woodbury.
And then we'll just have our own little music for
History
ethanol.
History of ethanol goes back to the 18th century.
Yes.
We're going to fuel
We're Native Americans.
We're going to fuel
in Massapequa.
I will say this. So this August will be 50
You will
years.
say this?
Yes.
You will say this.
I've been here almost 15 years. And many years ago, a member of Congress had a bill that would change ethanol policy. And I got so many comments from that representative and people that were in favor of ethanol. What I did it as like a 2 or 3 part series. And people heard like one part but didn't realize it was part of a series, even though we advertised it that way. And a lot of people from the great state of Iowa were calling here and giving me the business because they thought I was some anti-ethanol reporter trying to, usurp whatever.
Hurt their corn business.
So it is a very, there are a lot of people in these United States of America that do care very deeply about ethanol.
It's a very sensitive topic.
Man, it was. It was. It was so bad that I told Fred, I was like,
I tell you what, I've decided, Chris, you convinced me. You convinced me. I'm going to skip the Final Four. this weekend. I don't care about those silly college basketball games.
You send him the ethanol
I want to listen to your ethanol report that you've been sitting on.
It'll be the greatest thing you've ever heard me report on ethanol.
All right. Well, let's do it.
That's not exactly a high bar, Chris. But, no, I'm just kidding.
All right. So anyway,
that was ugly.
Yeah.
Okay.
You do a great job.
It's what I'm here for.
We mock what we don't understand, don't we? And so with tariffs, we will wait and hear what the president has to say this afternoon. And seriously, basically a lot of what President Trump wants to do hinges on the success of his decisions he's making on tariffs. Now he's got some kind of fight in the Senate coming up that I was reading about on Fox News. You want me to just read a couple paragraphs here? And I don't know any more than what I'm reading here, but I can understand this much. It says, this is the lead story on Fox News. Of course, we want people to go to American Family News.
Right. I'll share the link.
That's our website, but it says this: President Donald Trump called out Senators Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul of Kentucky, Susan Collins of Maine, and Linda Murkowski of Alaska in an effort to apply public pressure before the Senate votes on a measure to scuttle his Canadian tariff policy. So it says the joint resolution would terminate the national emergency Trump declared regarding illicit drugs in Canada. In his executive order, Trump called for slapping tariffs on America's northern neighbor.
So Trump is slapping the tariffs because he first declared a national emergency regarding drugs.
And Trump is mad at these 4 senators today because they are opposing him.
I wonder why. Now, Senator Mitch McConnell, okay, I'm just guessing here. Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, they've been troublesome for years. Yep. They are, I don't know if they're considered moderate or even left of center, but the Republicans can get them on board for some things, but they go rogue, okay? So they dance to a different drum. Mitch McConnell,
I'm glad you didn't say about Elizabeth Warren. That'd have been inappropriate.
Oh, yes. No, of course.
You weren't talking about Elizabeth Warren dancing to a
beat of a drum.
No,
I would never do that.
Okay, I'm glad.
I would never do that. No, none of us would.
No,
none of us would.
Nobody even thinks that around here.
No. So I just wanted to clarify because you are talking about senators.
Yes, because I would never have done that about
or thought it
about Matt.
No, don't say it.
Okay, you're right.
Don't say it
Because I almost slipped in it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Slipped into the river.
Back to your point.
Okay, so Senator Mitch McConnell has, since he's announced that he was no longer going to, I don't even know if he's running for re-election, is he? I know he's not going to be.
So. I think
okay, so he's kind of showing his true colors. He doesn't like Donald Trump, and I think the feeling's mutual. But Rand Paul,
it's kind of odd.
I'm wondering why he is I consider Rand Paul to be a very principled individual.
Yeah.
So there must be some kind of technical principle involved here. Maybe he considers what President Trump did in declaring the national emergency in order to take over the tariff policy. Maybe he considers that a misuse of power.
Historically, Republicans have been against tariffs.
Yeah. Tariffs and taxes, they say.
They have that Ronald Reagan, just the Republican economic policies have not been favorable to tariffs. If this were flipped, there would be a lot of Republicans opposed to this, I think, in the Senate because they don't like them. They think it causes prices to go up on everything, which we'll see. We'll see. But President Trump, he and his candidacy, they changed a lot went more populism.
Yes.
Than republicanism.
Conservatism. Yeah.
So we'll see. So I don't know. Again, I don't know what's going to happen with this particular vote. If these 4 senators are going to vote with the Democrats to block the what do they call it? Emergency, whatever it is, against Canada. I didn't know Canada was a big fentanyl country. That's what Trump says. They fentanyl's pouring in.
Massive. He said what's coming across from Canada is massive. What's coming across from Mexico is massive.
Have you ever heard that before?
I heard it during the campaign.
Mexico. We all know we have a drug problem. Drugs pouring over from Mexico.
He mentioned it during the campaign. He was talking about Canada, but now
he was
talking about Canada.
Pouring in fentanyl.
So I don't know. I have not looked up the numbers to see how much it has been confiscated coming across the Canadian border. Is Canada somehow lax? Is that the accusation, that Canada has been lax? Or perhaps it is that Canada has not been as diligent preventing illegal immigrants coming into Canada and then coming into the U.S. and therefore bringing fentanyl with them. I'm not sure exactly what the
what
president
if it's not
has
as
in
a
mind.
bit? I'm not going to say that. I guess I will say it.
Don't do it.
But I'm saying it. Don't know how I believe about my own statement right here. Okay.
Okay.
I'm
All
just
right.
going to say it. Does that make sense? No.
Yes.
Okay. What I'm saying is, what if it's unprovable that fentanyl is pouring over the border from Canada into the U.S., but Trump is only using that as cover for his
tariffs,
wanting the tariffs? Could that be a possibility?
As we said earlier in the first segment, $1.2 trillion trade deficit for the U.S. That's a lot. And
well, you don't need cover.
And so I'm thinking you don't need cover. Yeah. And if it is cover, I would prefer the president just say, no, that's not the cover. However, he may only be able to slap the tariffs because he's declared a national emergency.
Based on fentanyl.
Based on fentanyl. I'm not sure if that's what's been going on here.
Yeah. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. Next story, Chris.
There was an interesting exchange yesterday between Representative Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat from Texas.
All right, people, you need to listen to this.
Yes.
Jasmine
Crockett was in a congressional hearing yesterday. Now, she's the Democrat from Texas that has made news for a lot of things here lately. But during this congressional hearing, Jasmine Crockett let it be known that Republicans are all out to impeach judges that don't like Trump and want to do this and that. And then Representative Darrell Issa had a comeback to what she had to say. So the audio is going to begin with Jasmine Crockett. It will finish with Congressman Issa. Clip 9.
The problem that we have right now is that if we continue down this road, then we will not have a rule of law, because we have people that are currently serving and they're saying things like, ignore the judge's order. What it means to have law and order in this country is that you follow the order and you go through the appeals process, even if you dislike what the judge did.
Now, I'm going to note that when Cortez, or AOC as we know her, filed articles of impeachment on Justice Thomas and Alito, Ms. Crockett was one of the co-sponsors along with Mr. Cohen, both members of this committee. It does seem interesting that when the shoe is on the other foot, everyone is self-righteous. And I think this is a good example.
Representative Crockett there, well, she's making a name for herself, isn't she?
She sure is.
She's going to have her own variety show here before long, with her popularity growing and her notoriety.
I think that's all purposeful on her part.
Yeah, she's trying to compete with AOC.
I mean, she's doing a good job of getting her name out there. Am I right?
Yeah.
But what she was saying there, we need an independent judiciary, and what the Republican Issa is saying is, oh yeah, you're the one who voted to impeach Clarence Thomas and Thomas Alito, two Supreme Court justices.
And people giggled.
Yeah, she deserved the mockery there, because she's talking out of both sides of her mouth with her votes and her actions. Listen, I've said it before. Hypocrisy knows no bounds. When politicians,
it's bipartisan.
Yeah, Republicans can do it too. They can do it too. But mostly the hypocrisy is on the left. I will say that. All right, next.
I have another.
Do you want to say anything, Wesley, about this story, or you want to?
No.
Or does it speak for itself?
No, I want to get to another story with the time we got left.
Yes.
All right, what? Tell us, so we'll skip right
whatever he's got next.
One other soundbite that's been trending since yesterday afternoon. This is audio of a person claiming to be a fired HHS worker confronting Indiana Senator Jim Banks at an elevator. Clip 10.
Hi, I was a worker at HHS. I was fired illegally on February 14th. There are many people who are not getting social service programs, especially people with disabilities. Are you going to do anything to stop what's happening?
You probably deserved it.
I deserved it?
You probably deserved it.
I deserved it.
Dude,
wow.
So
Yeah, that's great to hear. Why did I deserve it?
Because you seem like a clown.
So at the end of this video, Banks steps into an elevator near the end of the exchange, and he says, because you seem like a clown, as the doors close. And that was the final word.
It was kind of a perfect moment. Listen, I'm not necessarily approving of what. Who was this? Was
Senator Jim Banks.
Senator Jim
Banks.
Banks.
He ambushed him.
Yeah.
Guy did.
If you're going to ambush somebody and try to talk to him while he's walking to the elevator,
right?
You're gonna get it. You're gonna get.
People don't like that.
No,
they don't like to be ambushed.
Now I understand that he's not going to get this guy, whoever he was, following him around. He's not going to get a sit down with a U.S. senator. He probably needs to go through his own representatives and senators and try to get answers. But if you're walking up to someone, especially in the environment we have in this country, where nobody knows, do you have a weapon?
Right.
You know, if you're going to walk up on somebody, by the way, I didn't see any Secret Service with the senator.
No.
But they don't have
or any kind of security.
It's basically like
he was inside the Capitol, though. Was he inside the Capitol building?
Yeah, there is a guy that's been Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee refers to this man as a stalker, but there is a guy claiming to be a reporter who every day meets Congressman Burchett as he's walking into the Capitol. This is outside, and he's always standing there with a cell phone ready, and he videos every exchange. And Burchett has gotten to where he's like poking fun at this guy, making fun of his wardrobe choices.
Because if the guy does this every day, my question is, what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you on welfare? And this is the way then if you've got that kind of energy, you need to get a job.
Right.
What the guy was saying there, he was a worker for Health and Human Services.
Claiming.
And people aren't getting what do you say, disabled people aren't getting their payments or their needs met because he was fired?
No, because others have been fired.
Yes.
What he's talking about is the downsizing of the federal government by President Trump. Right?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And he's making his case to Republican Senator Banks there in an ambush sort of setting.
So he probably deserved it.
Probably deserved it.
Now he's on the defense. Yeah. Why did he not deserve it?
Right. Yeah. Justify yourself.
Oh, wait. Elevator door
Why do you
closed.
say that? Because you act like a clown. Huh?
You seem like a clown.
You seem like a clown.
Mic drop.
We'll be back in 5 minutes. Stay with us.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
As a federal or state employee, you have the opportunity to support the American Family Association through the combined federal campaign. By designating a monthly payroll deduction using 12037, you help AFA continue to fight for your family. So when you complete your CFC form, remember, AFA's number is 12037. And thank you for your help.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The UK and other countries around the world are bracing themselves for the impact of President Trump's Liberation Day of new tariffs. Greg Palcott reports.
Government officials here admit they would be entering a challenging period if Trump follows through on 20% tariffs on all countries' imports. That would mean over $80 billion worth of goods from the UK. The UK, like other countries, had reached out to the administration, but according to local reports, they were mainly rebuffed. Some countries and blocs, like the European Union, are planning retaliation. Some $20 billion worth of U.S. imports to the EU will be hit with their own tariffs. The UK, as in other places, is hoping a trade deal between the two countries could be put in place. In London, Greg Palcott, Fox News.
Republican Randy Fine winning a special election in Florida to fill the House seat left vacant by National Security Advisor Michael Waltz. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis discusses Fine's win and his underperformance in a heavily conservative district.
It was an underperformance for Randy Fine, and I think that he was in really dire straits a few weeks ago, partially because, his record is more of a squish Republican. He's voted for Second Amendment restrictions. He's voted, he tried to make Florida a de facto sanctuary state and has opposed my immigration efforts.
The first statewide battleground election of 2025 is the most expensive judicial race in U.S. history.
Experts expect it'll be closer to $120 million spent on Wisconsin Supreme Court race. Most of that money coming from outstate and including cash infusions from conservative and liberal billionaires. The winner of Tuesday's race, liberal Judge Susan Crawford.
My promise to Wisconsin is clear. I will be a fair, impartial, and common sense justice on the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
With Crawford's win, the High Court maintains its liberal majority, as the court is expected to rule at some point soon on crucial issues like abortion and congressional redistricting, in which Republicans could lose U.S. House seats. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The Senate Commerce Committee holding a hearing about plane manufacturer Boeing. Texas Senator and Committee Chairman Ted Cruz says Boeing was once a household name because of their innovations in plane design, but recent incidents have made Americans grow concerned and doubtful.
Repeated worries about production issues at Boeing and its subcontractors has led many to question the company's ability to design and manufacture safe aircraft. Efforts to cut corners in production or to move the next production phase before necessary.
Homeschool Legal Defense Association continues to sound the alarm on a bill in the state of Illinois. Chris Woodward has more.
Will Estrada of Homeschool Legal Defense Association says HB 2827 would harm homeschool families in Illinois.
The bill is premised on two false premises. First, that homeschoolers are more at risk of abuse and neglect, and actually that's furthest from the truth. Peer-reviewed studies have shown that homeschooling is very safe for children. Homeschoolers are at less risk of abuse and neglect, but also that there are no regulations in Illinois, and that's just false. You have to educate your children.
Estrada also takes exception to language in HB 2827 that would do something no other state does, and that parents who fail to file the annual homeschool declaration form would be subject to a criminal conviction, up to 30 days in jail, and a $500 fine.
Then, as you know, when a parent goes to jail, the State Child Protective Services gets involved. We could even see children removed from homes and placed in temporary foster care, all for simply not filing a piece of paperwork.
Estrada thinks someone from outside the state is helping push this idea. He pointed to the Coalition for Responsible Home Education, a Massachusetts think tank that Estrada called a pro-authoritarian anti-parental rights organization dedicated to rolling back homeschool freedom in states. I'm Chris Woodward.
U.S. stocks are swinging again in the final hours before President Trump unveils tariffs. The S&P 500 was flat today after eliminating an early loss of 1.1%. The Dow rose 28 points and the Nasdaq Composite fell 0.1%. American Family News is available online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Pugh.
In Denver, Colorado, Jamie Sanchez obeyed the Lord's call and opened the Drip Cafe to create jobs to help unhoused people get back on their feet. Of course, the LGBTQ community began persecuting him for his Christian beliefs. His inspiring story of standing boldly for God's truth in the face of great opposition is part of our Impact series, and we'll send you the DVD as our thanks for your gift to AFA. Visit afa.net/spiritual war. afa.net/spiritual war.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildmon, president of the American Family Association.
Welcome back to the reading of
Chapter 6.
Tariff Talks.
Chapter 6.
Chapter 6. Yes. We start with
the tariff of 1824 between the brand new nation.
It just
of the
so
United
happened
States.
to be it was 47%. That's ironic.
Yes.
47%.
And the Canadian province of Nova Scotia.
I
the origin of this controversy.
Who would have thought?
All right, Tim, Ed, and Wesley, you already know this if you've been listening to the program here on American Family Radio. Today's Issues is the name of it. We do have podcasts for those who want to download this show daily. Podcasts, go to afr.net.
Who just don't get enough of it when they're listening live.
Right?
We do have a lot of people who download the podcast.
Yes, we do.
It's pretty stunning.
I'm surprised.
Steve Paisley Jordahl.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Joins us now. Good morning, Steve. So
But by the way, you sometimes get a chance to listen to the first hour.
Most of it. I had some computer problems, and I was uploading some stuff.
So did you get to hear our idea of having a segment during today's issues called Tariff Talk?
Yes, and we can get some nice soothing music.
Yes, that's what I thought. Now, Brent Creeley, our producer, he had to step out, and we have Adam Suddeth has taken his place. But Brent gave me a dirty look when I suggested getting some kind of music. It takes a little bit of work for them to get some appropriate music, and it's not easy.
Do you remember when I first started coming on this show and we had files? We had like the snowflake files and everything.
Yeah.
You play a little theme.
That was across the street.
Yeah.
And that studio that was starting to slip into the gully behind the building.
And we played that theme every time before we started talking about it. Yeah.
I enjoyed those kind of things. And we had a Russia file, remember? There was a Russia file.
Those were the good old days.
We had some music from some Russian choir.
Yeah, and it was the Russian national anthem.
Yes.
How
did I miss
which I like. I like that.
Before you were on the show.
Okay.
It was.
Before you were on the show.
Still listen, though, before. Was it a regular thing?
It was
once or twice
hit or miss.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were like, this show was like down to like under 100 listeners. But then when we started talking about tariffs,
it skyrocketed.
And Russia, you talk about that was gas to our automobile right there.
Yeah.
rocket gas.
It was rocket fuel.
Rocket fueled our rocket.
Right.
Borrowed from Elon Musk. All right, Steve, over to you.
All right.
Hey, by the way, are Elon Musk, are his rockets that do you charge them into electrical battery?
No, those aren't electric.
It was definitely rocket fuel.
There's not such thing as electrical charge.
No.
A rocket?
You cannot escape the Earth's atmosphere by plugging in your electric vehicle.
Okay. Although he did send a Tesla up into space.
Yeah, not using the Teslas under the Tesla's own power.
But it was a fully battered Tesla.
Yeah.
It's still up there right now.
Yeah,
right?
with an
By
astronaut.
the way, did you guys see, I think it was this week I saw a picture. Elon Musk was giving away these rose-colored Teslas. They look like some kind of sports car.
Yeah?
Wow, they were gorgeous.
Giving them away for who?
I forget.
Where do I sign up?
Because they were beautiful.
I don't think that my Tesla would be that much in danger down here in Mississippi. I wouldn't think.
We got our fair share of crazies.
Hey, can we start? I wanted to note the passing.
They're not left-wing crazies. They're crazies for other reasons. Ed?
I'm not following you.
I said in Mississippi.
Yeah, I heard you.
Steve was talking about our home state here, and you said we got our fair share of crazies down here. Talking about these nuts that are keying Teslas and so forth around the country. My point was, just so you'll follow me.
Yes.
That our crazies in Mississippi are for reasons not necessarily associated with left-wing politics. That's my point.
I heard you. I didn't understand what you were talking about.
It was Elon's parody on X.
It was a parody account?
Parody.
Okay. Well, I'm disappointed.
So you were fooled?
I was fooled.
By parody? Was it on April 1?
Oh, my goodness, it was.
You were suckered by Elon Musk on
my
April
goodness.
1st.
On April 1st. It was yesterday.
What was the
parody?
It was that he was giving away. Because he gave away the $1 million for 2 voters.
So he said he's giving away Teslas that are rose-colored?
Yeah, rose-colored.
You fell for it,
I did. I fell for it.
Well, there you go.
Well, I wonder if I can go back and erase my application. No, I didn't apply. I couldn't afford the insurance for something like that.
Can we start here? I'd like to note the
We
past.
sure can. Go ahead. I just want to affirm you.
That's fine. I'd just like to note the passing of one of my favorite actors. We talked about this morning. Val Kilmer has passed away. He was in a whole lot of different
manly movies,
including Top Gun, the first one, and the second one,
Top Gun Maverick.
Right, but his favorite role of mine was in the movie Tombstone, and I wanted to listen to just a little. Play cut 11 for us, Adam.
Well, I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry.
Why, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
Doc Holliday.
Such a good actor.
I remember that scene.
That was he was a very good actor.
Yeah.
And I don't actually know all the movies. I don't know if all the movies he played in.
We
were
could look it up on IMDb,
manly, but
yeah.
Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's only 65.
Yeah. He I didn't know. I thought cancer got him.
No,
you said, Steve, that
pneumonia.
Okay, he had defeated cancer, through that.
Yeah, he beat the throat cancer. Of course, that left him without the ability to speak. And if you saw the latest Top Gun movie, he had scarves around the scar and everything. But
anyway,
he was best known. Well, that was a big role, Doc Holliday, but he was best known probably as Tom Cruise's wingman. Right?
Yeah,
his rival.
His rival in
well,
the
not
first
his
one.
wingman. Yeah, his rival on
Iceman.
Top Gun.
Iceman
on Top Gun, the original Top Gun. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right. Next story.
All right. We are Doge is at work, and it has uncovered some interesting things at the Social Security office.
People need to brace themselves for this one. Doge, of course, is Elon Musk and the Department of
Government Efficiency.
Okay, go.
So they were in the Department of Government Efficiency. They were going through all the records, and they said there was some people, very helpful Social Security people who pointed them to this problem. I'm going to go ahead and play you Elon and one of his tech bros, and I don't have the guy's name, but he's explaining what kind of is happening here. Cut 12.
Once you're in the country and you've got asylum through one of these pathways, and we've mapped the whole thing out, you can apply for a work document. You file a 765, it's the work form. You get this form called the 766, that's the authorization, and then Social Security Administration automatically sends you in the mail your Social Security number. No interview, no ID.
It was a massive, large-scale program to import as many illegals as possible, ultimately to change the entire voting map of the United States and disenfranchise the American people and make it a permanent, deep blue, one-party state from which there would be no escape.
The defaults in the system from Social Security to all of the benefit programs have been set to max inclusion, max pay for these people, and minimum collection. That's what's happening. We found 1.3 million of them already on Medicaid, as an example. And we're asking ourselves why. Right. And so we actually just took a sample and looked at voter registration records. And we found people here registered to vote. In this population, yes.
And who did vote?
And we found some by sampling that actually did vote.
They never said how many, but
let me just say one thing, and then I know Ed wants to comment, maybe Wesley. The thing I appreciate about Elon Musk, he knows what's going on.
Yes.
Okay. The reason Elon Musk is involved is not for his ego. Certainly not for his business interest, because he's suffering. Tesla, at least right now, hopefully that's temporary, is suffering stock-wise and sales-wise because of Elon Musk involvement with President Trump and the government right here. But did you hear what Elon Musk was the one commenting upon how and he's talking about the Democrats primarily,
the Biden administration.
Yeah, they want these illegal people who are here illegally in our country to have Social Security numbers, and they want them ultimately to vote so that the numbers from these illegals who turn into voters overwhelm the swing states in particular and turn them to blue permanently. That's what he was talking about. What I'm saying is, I've been saying that for a long time. Elon Musk,
he could have just talked to you.
He could have. And given me a free car. I wouldn't have turned that away. But I'm just saying, he knows the reason he's involved, and I heard him talk about this before. He knows what's going on here between the secular globalist Marxist, the far left, and freedom and liberty and our way of life in America as we've known it, and their desire to change it. Did I lay that out pretty clear?
I'll just add this to it too. One of my favorite things about him is when
Elon,
when you're listening to him make comments on these, maybe it's just his personality thing, but at least it's good for video and for audio that he never gets too high or too low. He answers the question as a matter of fact.
Yes.
So obviously God gives us emotion, and emotion has its place. But in this type of level of government and issues, you don't want someone up there who's too hypersensitive to a question from the media, even if it's a jab or meant to be. He doesn't get provoked very easily.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so for him to cover this type of issue with such clarity and with such authority is helpful for us as a defense.
And let me just say this. And after listening to that, that's how close we came to losing the country. That's how close we came. Okay. Now let me tell you the handful of people that I think God used, whether they know it or not, whether they would admit it or not, to stop, at least temporarily, this corrupt scheme to overthrow the Constitution eventually, okay? Because it started before President Trump and Elon Musk. This scheme from the Biden administration was intended to flood red states, this is my view, in the southern part of the United States with illegals, millions of them. We heard from Doge that they were given a pathway to get a Social Security number. You file this form, you get this approval, then you can get a Social Security number, and they were set on max pay.
Yeah, this is the other thing. This is,
all right,
you could open the border, but every single social program, like you said, set the max pay and minimum pay.
And max benefits, okay? So these people are going to be paid by the federal government to become professional Democrats, okay? Maybe even not doing any work, okay? And this started to unravel when we had governors like Abbott and DeSantis and a couple others, I think maybe the Arizona governor, start sending these illegals out of red states into blue states, okay, where the public became very aware and blue state voters became very aware and swing state voters became very aware of the fact that these illegal immigrants were a net detriment to the civil polity. And that's when things began to unravel. And, of course, President Trump making this the centerpiece of his campaign and bringing in Elon Musk. But we came that close. 10, 12, 15, 20 million illegals. Who knows? If these governors had not sent them
right,
Martha's
it made
Vineyard
it a national issue.
And New York City and Chicago and made this a national issue, we might have had 30 million. And their plan was to make them into Democratic voters. Mm-hmm. And we came that close to losing the republic.
Yeah, a genius move of the governors to send them to blue states, to Martha's Vineyard, to Nancy Pelosi's backyard. They sent some.
It was funny, but it was genius too, because it did. The blue state, the blue state governors and mayors and so forth. I'm talking about Chicago, New York, Boston. They were like, remember they would make these snide remarks about basically the border states, saying basically you need to suck it up and quit being a bigot.
Yeah.
Huh?
Have some compassion.
Have some compassion.
Yeah.
And the border state governors were saying, and wait a minute, you're not having to feel any of this pain.
Right.
Okay. We're and by the way, the people that were quote shipped to Martha's Vineyard, as DeSantis did, and New York City. And you remember New York City?
And there's cities in California.
Yeah, and the New York City mayor, Adams, saying, whoa, 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 whoa.
Right.
New York City.
And the Boston. Anyway, they can't, in Chicago, they couldn't find places to put these folks. And remember the Chicago mayor saying, quit coming and all that. Anyway.
Colorado as well.
Denver, yes, Colorado. So, yes, not to revisit this whole issue, but this is one of the issues, one of the reasons that Trump beat Harris was the immigration issue and the border issue and the fact that Democrats, as Elon Musk is saying here, we're getting a little bit off topic here of why, but he wanted to bring it to attention what's happening with Social Security. These illegal citizens, they're not citizens, illegal immigrants, are getting Social Security numbers.
Huh.
That's what he was saying.
And
here.
would be able eventually to vote. And this to me is proof of what we suspected.
Yeah, listen, Biden and Harris and a lot of the Democrats, as we said here, they don't believe in borders at all. Now they'll give a little lip service to it, but you could see by their actions they let millions and millions. Some people say 12 to 15, maybe more. Remember that the record numbers? Right. Everybody saw it. Everybody consented. Even liberal media was going, "Yeah, they're coming in," and then we were just letting them go wherever they wanted to in the country. Biden was giving them an app they could go to and check in.
Yes,
and get their their welcome wagon. Subway discounted tickets and everything like that, so they get sandwich. I mean, I'm just saying that everything Biden did was he said, I invite a surge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They remember the Democrats all raising their hand and saying, yeah, we need to pay for all their health insurance. If they have health costs, we need to pay for it all. And they need to come here we don't care where they come from or how many come here. That's insanity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's evil.
But they did that in hopes that these people would ultimately vote Democrat, and it would be a voting bloc they could count on to dismantle completely the Republican Party.
And we would make that extrapolation a year ago, but now we have evidence because the Trump team won and the Doge is in there. That would, in fact, exactly what was happening.
Yes.
One of the things that I cut out for time was they said that there are 5-point-some change million illegal immigrants in the system. One of the ways that they can do this, they can step up to the border and the border will give them a notice to appear, right? And then they disappear into there are 5 million illegals, 700 immigration judges. The wait time was up to 6 years for that.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know. Nobody I know is opposed to people immigrating to America.
I don't know one person on either side.
No. We are indeed a nation of immigrants.
Yeah.
I mean, that's our history. So nobody's opposed to immigration. It's illegal immigration that is the problem because it's uncontrollable and it's expensive.
It's a threat to the national security.
We don't know who's here, where, and all this stuff. I mean, are they getting on
proper use of the word stuff?
Stuff. There you go. They're getting Social Security. In this case, they're signing
Medicaid.
Listen,
they were being put up in hotels.
Yeah.
In New York City.
Do you remember
they were kicking veterans out?
Do you remember in New York they actually closed down 2 schools for a couple of days, and they replaced those buildings with illegal immigrants?
Yeah, and by the way, illegal immigration into the U.S. has stopped.
Yes,
it's stopped.
It's stopped 90.
It's over.
Yep, 90 says the last report I saw that 97%. It's down 97%.
When Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas, Joe Biden and his administration, there's nothing we can do. Well,
yeah, remember that?
President Trump said,
we're waiting on the Republicans.
All we needed was a new president.
And he was right.
President Trump said.
Indeed.
Big story, Steve.
All right. Hey, do you know that they have found the Ark of the Covenant?
That's what I'm talking about.
So
one of my favorite movies.
I know. You brought this into us, and I thought this was kind of interesting. There's an retired FBI major, CIA agent called Major Ed Dames. And he said it was part of a program that they had for remote viewing. Tim, what's going on here?
Well, I saw this story last night on the Daily Mail, which I do read. I get a lot of my news from the Daily Mail. Some people say it's a tabloid. I
think they have pretty good
news site, if you ask me. But it's they have a bunch of news stories every day. So anyway, but they had a story here on the CIA agent, his name is Major Ed Dames, who says that the Ark of the Covenant is located inside the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron, Israel.
Is that the one in that that was in the third movie?
Well, that was in the first movie. The first movie wasn't.
Well, the third movie when they went to find the Holy Grail, that was in that
Petra.
Petra. That's not what they're talking about.
No, this is two different places. Petra. This few hours apart.
Mm-hmm.
Petra's in Jordan, the country of Jordan, and this one that he's saying is in Israel. But he's this gentleman says that he recently used his remote viewing skills to track down the missing ark. That sounds kind of hokey to me. Does it sound hokey to y'all?
It is absolutely
hokey. This is what I really
Very
found
hokey.
interesting is that the CIA had a whole remote viewing.
They did.
Department, and they disbanded it because it wasn't giving them any information. But he still.
I don't know. Who knows? But
let me just say that both the U.S. and the Soviet Union explored things like ESP, extrasensory perception, and astral projection and remote viewing to try to spy on one another. Now, folks,
I know the Cold War.
Yes, during the Cold War. Now, I know most of you are saying, well, that's just looniness. But if you do not believe in a spiritual realm and you believe in latent powers of the human mind, what they were trying to do and what this CIA, what this spook did was rely upon the CIA's remote viewing program. And somebody claimed to see remotely from like the U.S. and they went and saw in the Middle East.
He's claiming the Ark of the Covenant. I don't know. Do you think the Ark of the Covenant is still out there?
I have no idea. I really have no idea.
This article says that some prophecy that's supposed to be found again, but I don't remember that, and I must have missed that in the Bible.
You realize what question you're asking, who you asked it to?
Oh, yeah?
It's just us.
The Book of Revelation pictures in a vision the Ark of the Covenant being taken up, whether that is supposed to represent something that happened, taken up to heaven in the past, or it is still on the earth and will be taken up in the future. I have no idea. But I just have no answer to it.
I haven't talked to this friend of mine in a long time, but Bob Cornuke.
Oh yeah,
he looked for the Ark of the Covenant. And
there are some who believe it's in Ethiopia.
Some other people too. I can't think of all their names. Down to in the last 50 years have looked, and some people have looked for the Noah's Ark. Another.
You got to be careful though. You know what happened when the Nazis tried to open the Ark of the Covenant. So careful.
You don't want to open that thing up.
You don't want to open it.
Other relics mentioned in the Bible. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.
Hello, this is Tim Wildmon, president of American